Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode, a very interesting episode with Marcus Jones here with us. He's basically, you can see he's got a real background behind him. And also, he's a podcast host and very interesting character. So, Marcus, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Marcus Jones. I'm the creator of the Kicking It With Me podcast, which I'm the host, God's Little Soldier. And
And yeah, also tell us a little bit about this agency that you're building as well, the company.
yeah, no, absolutely. So just a little backstory, quick backstory. As I was, you know, getting closer, while in my faith, getting closer to God, I started to understand um, that with each other's stories, we could learn. Because each we all have a story. And when I started to understand what the Bible was at bare minimum was teaching us how to live, right? I started to understand that, you know, our stories can inspire others. And so when I started this podcast, I wanted to do something slightly different. And and so the difference is that I wanted to do like a documentary format where I take baby you and we go through your journey to that pivotal and transformational moment and highlight that moment. And that's the moment, that's the story where you and I and everybody else can relate, right? And we can learn from, because we're all in different seasons. And so when I started to understand like my calling and what I'm called to do is to, at bare minimum, is to inspire. And I honestly feel that with our stories, if we could really highlight that and understand that transformational moment, we could definitely change people's lives. And so with that, the creation of the Kicking It With Me podcast, was created. And then once I understood what I was doing, and on a production standpoint, I started to create a film and production company called Faith by Me Productions.
Wonderful. And so, how did you actually end up in this line of business?
Well, um, I really, when I started before the podcast, right, I really wanted to do something purposeful, right? As I was getting closer to God. And I had a bunch of ideas, but none of the ideas were purposeful, right? And as I was getting closer, like I said, I started to understand that the Bible at bare minimum gives us, stories on how we should live. And so when I started to think about like how can I highlight others, how can I inspire other people, I started to realize that the stories that you and I have, right, and everyone else, those are the stories that can inspire others and change their lives, right? And I'll give you a perfect example. Like for instance, we could take my mom for an example, right? My mom's a single mom, worked 3 jobs. She sacrificed when she had me. She was 19. She had to drop out of high school, right? So for young women who have children at a very young age, right? A lot of times they may feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, right? But here's my mom that she did what she had to do, right? To provide a life for me, and then she actually went back to school, got her GED. She went back to college, graduated on top of her college, top of her class. Became a teacher, became teacher of the year. So there's so many takeaways there, and that's just a little of her story, right? Um, and it gives the inspiration to others, women, to understand that if you do have a child, these may be the obstacles you may go through, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And if for women who don't have children right away, right, this gives you a clear picture that if you do make these type of decisions and have a child early and you're single, these are the obstacles that you may have to go through, right? Um, and so when I start to understand that, that's what enticed me to really produce this podcast.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So, there is definitely a story behind that. And then, obviously, what's your goal for your business for next 1 year?
Yes, that's a great question. So, season one is completed, right? and it's all about work ethic, right? And I broke down work ethic into 8 different characteristics, such as commitment, preparation, discipline, dedication, sacrifice, perseverance, persistence, and ultimately unstoppable, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm interviewing 8 different people that highlight those characteristics. And so for season 2, my goal is not only to get sponsorships, but is really to be on the big screen,
Mhm.
right? And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that because of the full production that I'm creating underneath the umbrella of podcast, I honestly feel that this type of show, right, could be picked up on other streaming platforms like Tubi, Netflix, right? And there's, distribution companies out there that will shop it. And so that's the ultimate goal is to be on the big screen.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. And then on top of that, obviously, we're talking a little bit
Give me one
about the
sec. Hold on.
concept
Hold on.
of your show.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we're just talking a little bit about the concept of your show as well.
Yes.
And then you were mentioning about the music as well.
Yes.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about this because that is so interesting, like how different music actually from different movies is taking you to different places or times and stuff. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So when I was in the process of creating this podcast, I started to realize and understand that, music is extremely powerful, right? And when I think about classical movies, right, that becomes classics, um, other than the actors and actresses, right, and the content, what helps makes the movie a classic? It's music, right? And so once I started to understand that, I I started to put together and started to really focus and analyze other shows out there, right? Like late night TV shows, right? Late night TV shows, if you really think about it, they have the intro that's common. We have music, right? So that's the branding concept, right? And then they have the show. And then at the end of the show, they have, a musical performance. Typically it's live or it's pre-recorded right in the studio. Since everything is pre-recorded here in my studio, I kind of went in a different direction and said, you know what? Let's make music videos, right? And kind of be creative with it, right? So
Mhm.
it's entertaining. So you're just not watching me in the studio. Now you're watching the studio, you're seeing the documentary format where we in the studio, where we're going on a journey with the interviewee. And then at the end of the show, you're going to get a musical performance. And exactly the same concept is to psychologically, right? Because that's how powerful music is that when you listen to music, it could take you back to exactly that movie, the year that you were, what you were doing that year, who you were dating, right? And so that's the concept is to basically make this show timeless, right? Make it a classic.
Great stuff. Yeah, absolutely. So, on top of that, obviously, so what's one piece of advice that you can share with our audience when it comes to, like sort of deciding on their podcast, deciding on their direction and stuff when it comes to applying the music to podcast?
Yeah, my advice is that, find a way how to, because for me is this, right? My podcast, yes, it's my podcast, right? But it's a platform to highlight others. What do I mean by that? I'm highlighting the interviewee, I'm highlighting the artist, right? So really, it's a platform for others. It's a platform to give the flowers to other people and give opportunities for these independent artists to have a platform to be shown, to be seen, and I feel as though like if more podcasters give that opportunity, right? And if they want to incorporate music, this is an opportunity to collaborate, right, with the musical artists, right? Because you have to understand musical artists, they have their own fan base too, right?
Mhm.
So once you start to collaborate and you start to produce this podcast and this show, you're extending your reach into other and you're extending your reach into, their following as well, right? And if you understand the concept of obviously, the algorithm out there, it's all about, without spending, so much money is if you want to think about organic reach, if you collaborate with the more people you do that you can, the longer the reach without spending as much money as possible.
Smart, smart, absolutely. That's very good point. And then on top of that, can you just tell us before we go, like what inspires you about your business?
What inspires me is that I get the opportunity, right? So I'll start with this is that I've learned to master I've mastered I mastered the art of receiving by learning the art of giving, right? And what do I mean by that is that I I'm willing to give and then inspire others, and I know that the universe will give it right back to me. So if we understand that concept and say, you know what, it's not all about me
Mhm.
and it's about you, that will all come back.
Yeah. Wow, fantastic, excellent. Yeah, I think we can definitely complete with that. Just before we go, obviously, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about you, or connect to you, how they can do that.
No, absolutely. So you could obviously Google me, right? I have a Google presence where it gives you all the information, right? It's the Kicking It With Me podcast, right? I'm on all social media platforms, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Um, and if again, Kicking It With Me podcast, I have, the logo is the same.
Mhm.
And that's the perfect way to really contact me because all the information is there. And again, underneath the umbrella of the podcast, it's the Faith by Me Productions, right? And giving an opportunity for other people who may not have the ability to start their own podcast because you may have to buy some equipment or whatever the case may be. The podcast is not the Marcus Jones podcast. It's not the God's Little Soldier podcast. It's the Kicking It With Me podcast. So what does that mean? That means that it's a network. If you wanted to start your own podcast, but you didn't know how, you don't have the right equipment, you could start your own show underneath the name Kicking It With Me podcast, hosted by such and such. Just like it's the Kicking It With Me podcast, hosted by God's Little Soldier.
Wow, fantastic. That was great. If anyone sort of has any questions for Marcus or me, you can write them down in the comments, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. If you like this episode, drop us a like, subscribe, and also see you all in the next episode. I really enjoyed this one, and all the best, and bye bye. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.